What happens when one of the most talked about women in the world walks onto a daytime talk show stage and completely loses control in front of millions of viewers? In just 38 seconds, a single comment from Joy Behar would trigger a meltdown so intense, so shocking, that security would have to step in and Meghan Markle would be escorted off. The View set in what can only be described as one of the most dramatic exits in television history. The View studio was buzzing that morning. The audience had lined up hours before the show started, eager to see Meghan Markle in person. This was supposed to be a simple interview, a chance for Meghan to talk about her latest projects and share some insights into her life. The producers were excited. The network was thrilled. Everyone thought this would be a ratings win. Joy Behar sat at the table, shuffling her notes and chatting with her co-hosts before the cameras started rolling. She had interviewed hundreds of celebrities over the years. She knew how to ask tough questions while keeping things respectful. She had a reputation for being direct but fair, and audiences loved her for it. When Meghan walked out onto the stage, the crowd erupted in applause. She smiled and waved, taking her seat across from the panel. She wore an elegant cream-colored suit, and her hair was styled perfectly. Everything seemed normal at first. The first few minutes of the interview went smoothly. They talked about Meghan's charitable work and some of the causes she cared about. Then Joy asked a simple question, the kind of question any journalist would ask. "So Meghan, a lot of people have been curious about your relationship with the royal family. Can you tell us where things stand now?" Meghan's smile faded slightly. She shifted in her seat and took a breath before answering. "Well, Joy, I think that's a very personal matter, and I'm not sure it's appropriate to discuss on national television." Joy nodded. "I understand it's personal, but you've spoken about it in other interviews. I think people are just looking for an update." "Other interviews were on my terms," Meghan said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "I chose what to share and when to share it. I don't appreciate being ambushed." The audience went quiet. Joy's eyebrows raised slightly. "Ambushed? Meghan, this is The View. We ask questions. That's what we do. Nobody's ambushing you." Meghan leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "You know exactly what you're doing. You're trying to make me look bad. You're trying to get me to say something controversial so you can have your little moment." Joy remained calm, her voice steady. "Actually, I'm trying to have a conversation. You agreed to come on this show. You knew we'd ask about your life." "I came here to talk about my work," Meghan shot back. "My charity, the things that actually matter. But all you care about is drama and gossip." One of the other co-hosts tried to jump in, attempting to redirect the conversation, but Meghan wasn't having it. "No, let Joy finish. She clearly has an agenda here." Joy put down her notes and looked directly at Meghan. "I don't have an agenda. I have a job, and that job is to ask questions that our audience wants answers to. If you're not comfortable answering, you can simply say that. But calling me names and accusing me of ambushing you isn't fair." "What's not fair?" Meghan said, her voice rising. "Is that I come on this show in good faith and I'm treated like I'm on trial. Do you know what I've been through? Do you have any idea what it's like to be scrutinized every single day?" Joy's expression softened slightly. "I can imagine it's difficult. But Meghan, you're not the only person who's ever faced public scrutiny. Many people go through hard things, and they don't lash out at people who are just doing their jobs." That comment seemed to ignite something in Meghan. Her face flushed and she sat up straighter in her chair. "Excuse me? Did you just compare your experience to mine? You have no idea what I've dealt with. None. You sit here in your comfortable studio with your comfortable life and you think you can judge me?" The other co-hosts exchanged worried glances. The audience was completely silent now, watching this unfold in real time. Joy kept her composure. "I'm not judging you. I'm simply saying that being asked questions in an interview isn't an attack. It's a conversation." "This isn't a conversation," Meghan snapped. "This is you trying to tear me down because you're jealous. You're jealous that I've actually done something with my life, that I married a prince, that I matter." A few gasps came from the audience. Joy blinked, clearly taken aback by the personal attack, but she didn't raise her voice. "Meghan, I think you need to take a breath. You're upset, and I understand that, but what you just said was out of line." Meghan laughed, but it wasn't a genuine laugh. It was bitter and sharp. "Out of line? You want to talk about out of line? How about the way you've talked about me on this show before? How about all the times you've made snide comments about my family?" "I've given my opinions, yes," Joy said calmly. "That's what we do on this show. We discuss current events and public figures. But I've never personally attacked you. You're attacking me right now. Meghan's voice was loud enough that people in the back row could hear every word clearly. You brought me here just to humiliate me, just to make yourself feel important. Joy shook her head slowly. That's absolutely not true. You were invited here as a guest. We wanted to hear from you. But if you can't handle a simple question about your life, then maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. How dare you tell me what I should or shouldn't do? You don't get to dictate anything to me. You're nobody. The audience gasped again, louder this time. Joy remained seated, her hands folded on the table in front of her. Meghan, I think you should sit down and we can take a break. I'm not sitting down, Meghan said, her voice shaking with anger. And I'm not taking a break. I'm done with this. I'm done with you. One of the producers off camera made a signal to cut to commercial, but Meghan wasn't finished. She pointed at Joy, her finger shaking. You think you're so smart. You think you're so clever with your little questions and your little comments. But you're just a bully. That's all you are. Joy finally stood up, her expression firm but not angry. Meghan, I've been nothing but respectful to you. I asked you a question about your life, a life that you've put in the public eye. If you can't handle that, then you need to think about why you're really here. I'm here because I was told this would be a friendly interview, Meghan said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. But I should have known better. I should have known that people like you would never treat me fairly. People like me? Joy repeated. What does that mean? Meghan waved her hand dismissively. You know exactly what it means. You're all the same. You pretend to be progressive and open-minded, but the second someone like me comes along, someone who actually challenges the system, you tear them apart. Joy took a deep breath. Meghan, I don't know what you think is happening here, but you're the only one being hostile. I asked you one question, and you've spent the last several minutes attacking me personally. Because you deserved it, Meghan shot back. Someone needs to put you in your place. That was the moment. The 38-second mark from when Joy had asked her simple question. The moment when everything went too far, Joy's co-hosts looked stunned. The audience sat frozen, and Joy herself simply shook her head. I think we need security. Meghan laughed again, that same bitter sound. Security? Are you serious? You're going to have me removed because I'm standing up for myself? No, Joy said quietly. I'm going to have you removed because you're being abusive, and you've crossed a line that no guest on this show has ever crossed before. A security guard appeared from the side of the stage. He approached carefully, speaking in a low voice to Meghan. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. Meghan looked at him, then back at Joy, then at the cameras. This is insane. You're all insane. Please, ma'am, the security guard said again, gesturing toward the exit. Meghan grabbed her purse from beside her chair. She looked at Joy one more time. You're going to regret this. All of you. Joy didn't respond. She simply watched as Meghan turned and walked toward the exit, the security guard following close behind. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the walk-off. As Meghan reached the edge of the stage, she turned back and shouted, You have no idea who you're dealing with. Then she was gone, disappearing behind the curtain. The studio was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Joy slowly sat back down, her co-host still looking shocked. The audience didn't know whether to clap or stay quiet. Joy cleared her throat and looked directly at the camera. Well, that was unexpected. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. The commercial break music started playing, but nobody in the studio moved. The crew members stood frozen. The audience members whispered to each other in disbelief. The co-host leaned toward Joy, asking if she was okay. Joy nodded, though she looked shaken. Not angry, just surprised. In all her years of doing this show, nothing like this had ever happened. She had interviewed politicians, activists, celebrities, and controversial figures. She had handled disagreements and debates, but she had never had a guest completely lose control and personally attack her like that. When the show came back from commercial, Joy addressed what had just happened. She spoke calmly and professionally. As you just saw, our interview with Meghan Markle took an unexpected turn. I asked a question about her relationship with the royal family, a topic she's discussed publicly before, and things escalated from there. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I want to be clear about something. On this show, we ask questions. Sometimes they're tough questions. Sometimes our guests don't like them. But we've always maintained a level of respect and professionalism. What just happened was unfortunate, and I hope Meghan is okay. but I also want our audience to know that I was simply doing my job." The co-hosts nodded in agreement. One of them added, "Joy has been nothing but professional. We all saw what happened." Joy continued, "I've been called a lot of things over the years. I have thick skin. But I think it's important for everyone watching to understand that asking questions isn't an attack. Having a conversation about someone's public life isn't bullying, and responding to a simple question with personal insults and accusations isn't appropriate, no matter who you are." The audience applauded, showing their support for Joy. She smiled slightly and thanked them before moving on to the next segment. But everyone in that studio knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Behind the scenes, the producers were already dealing with the aftermath. Meghan had left the building immediately, refusing to speak to anyone. Her team was making phone calls, trying to do damage control. The network executives were in emergency meetings, trying to figure out what to do next. But on stage, Joy continued the show as planned. She interviewed the next guest, discussed the day's hot topics, and kept things moving forward. Because that's what professionals do. They don't let chaos derail them. They don't stoop to the level of personal attacks. They maintain their dignity and they do their job. The contrast was striking. On one side, you had Joy Behar, a veteran journalist who had been disrespected and insulted on live television, but who handled it with grace and composure. On the other side, you had Meghan Markle, who had been asked a single question and responded by having a complete meltdown. As the show went on, the co-hosts occasionally referenced what had happened, still processing it themselves. "I still can't believe that just occurred," one of them said during a commercial break that viewers at home couldn't hear. "In all my years here, I've never seen anything like it," another co-host agreed. Joy didn't do anything wrong. She asked a normal question. Meghan just couldn't handle it. The audience members who were there that day would tell the story for years to come. They would talk about how uncomfortable it was to watch, how you could feel the tension in the room, how everyone held their breath waiting to see what would happen next. They would talk about how professional Joy was, how she never lost her cool even when Meghan was shouting at her. Back on the stage, during the final segment of the show, Joy took a moment to reflect. "You know, we have conversations on this show every single day. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, sometimes things get heated. But at the end of the day, we're all adults, and we treat each other with respect. That's the foundation of any good conversation." She looked at the camera, speaking directly to the viewers at home. "I hope everyone watching understands that what happened today was not normal. It's not how guests are supposed to behave, and it's certainly not how we conduct ourselves on this show. We ask tough questions because that's our responsibility. We push back when we think someone isn't being truthful, but we always do it with respect." The co-host nodded along, and one of them reached over to squeeze Joy's hand in a show of support. The audience applauded again, even louder this time. As the show wrapped up and the credits began to roll, Joy sat back in her chair and took a deep breath. The camera stopped recording, and the studio lights dimmed slightly. Her co-hosts gathered around her, making sure she was really okay. "I'm fine," Joy assured them. "Really, I've dealt with worse than that." But everyone knew that wasn't quite true. This had been different. This had been personal in a way that most confrontations weren't. Meghan hadn't just disagreed with Joy or challenged her questions. She had attacked Joy's character, her career, her very worth as a person. And she had done it in front of millions of people. The production assistants began cleaning up the set, gathering notes and coffee cups, and preparing for the next day's show. The audience filed out slowly, still buzzing with excitement about what they had witnessed. Some of them took photos of the stage, wanting to remember the exact spot where it all went down. In the green room, Joy's team gathered to debrief. They watched the footage back, analyzing every moment of the confrontation. "You handled that perfectly," her publicist told her. "You stayed calm, you didn't take the bait, and you stood your ground." Joy shrugged. "I just did what felt right in the moment. I wasn't going to let her bully me on my own show." And that was the key difference, wasn't it? Joy saw it as her show, her space, her responsibility to maintain order and professionalism. Meghan had walked in as a guest and somehow expected to control the entire narrative, to dictate what questions could be asked and how the conversation would go. When Joy had pushed back, even gently, Meghan couldn't handle it. She was so used to being catered to, so accustomed to people walking on eggshells around her, that a simple, straightforward question felt like an attack. And instead of taking a breath and responding like an adult, she had lashed out. The security guard who had escorted Meghan out came by to check on Joy. "You doing okay, Miss Behar?" "I'm good, thank you," Joy said with a genuine smile. "Thanks for stepping in when you did." "That was wild," he said, shaking his head. "In 20 years of working here, I've never had to remove a guest from the set. That detail would become part of the legend of this moment. 20 years, hundreds, maybe thousands of guests. And Meghan Markle was the first one who had to be escorted out by security." As the day wound down and people started heading home, the social media explosion was just beginning. Clips of the confrontation were already circulating online. People were choosing sides, though it was pretty clear that most viewers supported Joy. The comments reflected what everyone in that studio had felt. Joy was so professional, she didn't deserve that. Meghan showed her true colors today, yikes. How entitled do you have to be to act like that on someone else's show? Joy Behar is a class act. The way she handled that was incredible. The next morning, Joy would come back to The View and address the situation one more time. She would take the high road, as she always did, saying she wished Meghan well and hoped she would find peace. She wouldn't gloat or mock or continue the conflict, because that wasn't who Joy was. But on this day, in this moment, sitting in the green room after the most dramatic interview of her career, Joy allowed herself a small smile. She had stood her ground. She had refused to be bullied or intimidated. She had shown everyone watching that you don't have to raise your voice or lose your composure to stand up for yourself. The View had always been a place for honest conversations, even when those conversations got uncomfortable. Joy had spent years building that reputation, asking the questions that needed to be asked, pushing back against nonsense, and treating her guests with respect as long as they showed respect in return. Meghan Markle had walked onto that stage, expecting special treatment. She expected softball questions and praise and complete control over the narrative. When she didn't get that, when she was treated like any other guest who had to answer for their public statements and actions, she couldn't cope. And so she had done what entitled people often do when they don't get their way. She had thrown a tantrum. She had made accusations. She had tried to turn herself into the victim of some imaginary attack. But the cameras had captured everything. The audience had seen everything, and there was no way to spin it. Joy finished her tea and stood up, ready to head home. Tomorrow would bring new shows, new guests, new conversations. This moment would fade into television history, a wild story that people would talk about for years, but that wouldn't define her career. As she walked out of the studio and into the New York evening, Joy thought about all the interviews she had done, all the difficult conversations she had navigated, all the time she had stood firm in the face of pressure. This had been just one more test, and she had passed it. Because at the end of the day, the truth was simple. Joy Behar was a professional who knew how to do her job, and Meghan Markle was a guest who couldn't handle a single question without completely falling apart. That was the story. Not the story Meghan probably wanted told, but the story that everyone who was there that day would remember. The day a simple question triggered a meltdown so epic that it ended with security guards and a dramatic exit, and one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history. And through it all, Joy had remained calm, collected, and completely professional. She had given Meghan every opportunity to take a breath and reset. She had tried to de-escalate. She had offered an out, but Meghan had chosen chaos instead. In the end, that choice revealed everything anyone needed to know about both women. One knew how to handle pressure and disagreement with grace. The other crumbled the moment things didn't go exactly her way. The lights in the studio were almost all off now. The cleaning crew had finished their work. The building was quiet. But the impact of what had happened would echo for a long time to come. Joy Behar asked a question. Just one question. And in 38 seconds, everything had exploded. But she had weathered the storm, maintained her integrity, and shown the world exactly what real strength looks like. Not the kind of strength that shouts and accuses and demands special treatment. The kind of strength that stays calm under fire, refuses to be rattled, and never compromises its principles, no matter how intense things get. That was the real story of what happened when Meghan Markle appeared on The View. Not a story of two people clashing, but a story of one person doing her job and another person completely losing control when faced with the most basic expectation of any interview: answering questions about your own public life. And as Joy drove home that evening, she knew that she had nothing to apologize for, nothing to regret, and nothing to change about how she had handled the situation. She had been exactly who she had always been: professional, direct, fair, and unwilling to be pushed around. Sometimes that's all you can do. Show up, do your job, treat people with respect, and stand your ground when someone tries to walk all over you. Joy had done all of that, and that's why, when people look back on this moment, they would remember her as the person who kept her dignity intact while chaos swirled around her. The view would go on, Joy would go on, and somewhere, hopefully, Meghan would learn that the world doesn't revolve around her and that basic accountability isn't the same thing as an attack. But that would be her journey to take. Joy's journey was already clear. Keep asking questions, keep having conversations, keep standing firm, and never, ever let anyone make you feel bad for simply doing your job with integrity and professionalism. That was the lesson. That was the takeaway. That was what everyone who watched that explosive 38 seconds would carry with them. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And when the pressure is on, be the person who rises to the occasion rather than the person who crumbles beneath it. Joy Behar had been that person, and that's why, despite all the drama and chaos and shouting, she walked away from that interview with her head held high.